I've been growing out this rubber tree for 3 years now, and while my biggest secret for success is to just give it a lot of light, there is one massive problem with that.
The problem is now the plant looks like this, and this is ridiculous. And if I'm lucky, after another 3 years, the plant will look like this. Obviously, that's not what I want. I need this rubber tree to start branching out so it can actually look like a tree. Now, while there is a few different ways to get your rubber tree to start branching out, I think I'm going to take the easy way out. It's time for bed.
While the blanket and pillow is a joke, laying your plant down is actually the easiest way to get your rubber tree to branch out. The problem is with a hormone called auxin that's produced at the top of your plant, and gravity distributing it slowly downwards into the roots. Auxin prevents side branching, so it's our job now to disrupt the auxin. The first and often most unreliable way to get your plant to branch is by cutting the stem. This can cause your plant to change from one stem to branching multiple. But sometimes this just doesn't work because auxin is not distributed evenly. You can have a single stem grow from anywhere between 6 to 8 inches from where you've cut your plant. The second is called notching, where you have to take a knife and cut between 1/4 and 1/3 into the stem of your plant. You cut again at a 45-degree angle to take out a triangle-shaped chunk of your stem. While this notch does have to be deep and it's a little bit intimidating, it is a more reliable way to get your plant to branch out exactly where you want it to along the stem. The third way is what I like to call the bonsai method, and that's where you take a metal wire and slowly bend the stem of your plant to the point where it's growing upside down. With the flow of auxin disrupted this way, you can see new growth from anywhere along the highest point of the stem. But if you want gravity to disrupt your auxin, you only need to lean your plant at about a 45-degree angle. And that's enough to encourage branching. No cuts and no wires required. So instead of using string to rig my plant up from the ceiling so it can lean at that 45-degree angle, I'm just going to lay my plant flat on the ground so that gravity will disrupt the auxin and new growth can come from anywhere along the stem.
I don't think I've ever messed up this badly. I had an entire script and plan written out for this video too. My biggest mistake was laying the plant down in direct sun for far too long. This light that you see shining now starts from sunrise up until about 2 p.m. But after 2, this section is completely shaded. Where I had laid the plant down on the floor right here pretty much receives direct sun for the entire day. And for a plant this size, it's just way too much light. So now I have to do exactly what I was avoiding before, chopping this plant's head off. The thing that frustrates me the most is that my plan is actually working. A ton of new leaves had started activating on this plant. Here's one here, but it got burnt so bad that this is completely shriveled up. Surprisingly, still providing a ton of nutrients to the top of the plant because it is still growing. But to make sure, I'm just gonna have to cut below here. So I'm gonna go for the cut right here, and hopefully this leaf right here continues to activate. This one down here continues to activate, and we can still get that nice branching tree-like structure that we really want. All right, sorry buddy, here goes nothing.
And remember that the sap on any ficus can be a huge skin irritant, so it's always best to wear gloves when you're making your cuts.
So despite my best efforts to get this plant to do what I want it to do, I'm pretty sure it's given up on me. And while my technique worked and it gave me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 new growth points, none of them decided to activate and continue to grow. It really only just put out stuff below. Even removing a lot of the lower section so it could focus growth on the top never really worked. Despite how many new growth points I picked off, it's still just producing new growth from the lower leaves. I think it's just time to call it. I'm going to chop the top half of this rubber tree off and we'll see what it looks like. So now with the top of this rubber tree officially cut off, 3 things. Number 1, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. I won't do this again. Number 2, this climbing pole is aspirational. And number 3, let's just pray that This grows really well.
Psych, just kidding, sorry not sorry. I'm actually sticking with this method as a perfectly viable way to get your rubber tree to branch. Here's a couple of things that I learned. This damage that was on my rubber tree has an actual name. The info sheet on the University of Florida's website about ficus plants calls this a permanent kink or dogleg that's caused by excessive moisture stress, which makes total sense because of the excessive sun that the plant was in. A ton of sun caused drying out, which caused that dogleg, and while it would have partially recovered, it was the best decision to just cut that section off. This method, while low effort and low maintenance, clearly works. There is a couple of things that I would have done differently. Of course, obviously not letting the plant get scorched in the sun, but I would have just let the plant do its own thing. I knew that branches could have come from random locations, so I needed to curb my expectations and not expect everything to branch perfectly at the top like I was hoping. I needed to be alright with some things branching from the bottom. Not every growth point is going to activate. You can just let the plant do its own thing, and ripping off new growth points is not necessarily going to force it to grow from the sections that you hope it will. When you think about it, there's no method that's going to give you that picture perfect tree branching structure that you're looking for every single time. And more than likely, massive greenhouses that are growing these at scale are probably just selecting the ones that look perfect with their branching, and any other plants they're just cutting up and using for propagations of smaller plants. So if notching is the most accurate way to get your rubber tree to branch, then why haven't I tried to notch this one that's been growing behind me for the last 4 years? Well, it's because I bought this plant as a bush with 6 individual plants in the same pot. I really haven't needed it to branch out because it already looks pretty filled out. And I haven't wanted to notch because I don't need to risk altering the looks of the plant right now. Also, it's because I'm scared, but you should notch yours. You'll be fine.